Welcome to Wild. I'm your host, Robin Lavasser. They say our biggest fear is not that we are inadequate. It's being powerful beyond measure. In this podcast, I will share how to break through imaginary ceilings, lean into success, discovering your purpose, and understanding how to create the business and life of your dreams. From failures to triumphs and all the tactics in between, let's jump into the wild arena together. Welcome back to Wild with Robin Lavasser. I want to talk about the set today. I've talked about it before, but I want to go into detail into one of the categories. The set, for me, is a direct equivalent to how you ultimately earn money in whatever craft that you are in. And I'm going to dive a little deep in this podcast around actual loan knowledge, because that's part of the set. I think you'll be able to take away some things that could apply to your craft specifically, but I'm going to get a little specific on some things because I think this is a true weak spot in lending in general. And honestly, on a soapbox a little bit, I think we have an obligation to our clients, to our real estate agents, and ultimately to ourselves to absolutely be a professional in this area. And a professional just have one attribute of what is needed to win. It focuses on all three and develops all three. And so what is the set? Let's start with that in the basics. The set is, one, the knowledge of the skill set, if you will, that you need in order to be a master of your craft. And that happens over time, right? The very first loan that I did as a processor, a little shaky, and then it got better over time. The more files I touched, right? I was able to develop that. Becoming a driver, let's say that you drive and deliver and you're in a big truck. I guarantee you your first time driving it was a little wobblier, if you will, and a little shakier than your 100th time driving. No different in loans. The first one you touch versus, 100 loans later, you're a little different in how you tackle things. Now, yes, you can be faster on the system and on the keyboard and all of those things. I'm not talking about just that. I'm talking about learning as you go, right? Hands-on knowledge and development happens every single day of our lives if we treat it that way, if we treat ourselves like we are a student of our own craft. And as you grow and expand in the set in general, you have loan knowledge, if you will, of whatever skill set you need. In addition to that, another piece to the set in our world is sales. So sales is how you acquire clients, how you get people to then use your knowledge skill set, right? A dentist with no patience doesn't do any good because they have to have patience to work on the teeth. A loan officer with no loans, but tons of knowledge doesn't do any good, right? So knowledge is not powerful unless it's implemented. That is part of the set. And the very last piece is leadership development, because you can't leverage time and grow without more help. At some point, you're at capacity. And so you have to develop a capacity skill set, a delegation, a leadership. It all falls into that category. And so you've got expansion, if you will, scale skill set that comes with leadership. You have craft knowledge, which is your knowledge of exactly what you're doing in your field of choice. And then you have client acquisition, which falls into, for my world, I call it sales, leadership, knowledge. That is the set. And in order to really be masterful, you have to have all three. Where is one link? I will tell you, without sales skills, you are for sure not able to use that knowledge. So what has happened in the industry is so many people have gone out and actually adapted a ton of sales skills, which is a huge win, but they've let the knowledge lapse. And because computers are so efficient, because there are so many tools at our fingertips, when you let somebody do something for you, if you will, you don't have those old school roots that often worked because you can get to it faster, easier, right? When your phone spell checks for you, you might never really recognize that you're a bad speller because there are so many tools that can make that easier for you. And we don't spell while we talk, right? It's only when we're writing or typing, and writing has become pretty archaic. So for the most part, you're always going to have something to correct you. I think the world could potentially be full of bad spelling in the future for people that are actually writing something down because we're simply not retaining. It's no different in loans. When the computer will do so much for you, when you can leverage different tools out there to take care of things, you yourself might not have the communication and the ability to give the client something that's customized to them because you really don't know where to go with questions to ask. things to review, things to dig in, to be able to strategize the very best loan. And I'll give you a couple examples. I've heard from multiple loan officers and many that I get to lead, gosh, this borrower is just a shopper. They are shopping. And when you think about differentiation, one of the keys to differentiation is being able to differentiate yourself in the sea of sameness in our world, that the end result, meaning that the completion of the loan in basic terms, will happen if they are with me, ABC lender down the road, DCB lender, whatever it is down the road, multiple lenders online, they're all going to get the loan closed most likely. So what is the differentiation? Well, if people can work faster than you because of technology, and people can work cheaper than you because maybe they are paid less, or they're on a platform where it's an overseas call center, whatever the case, they can work for less. How do you then differentiate? And I will tell you the key to that is the knowledge skill set, because you're not just going to take orders. I talk a lot about that. You're not going to be an order taker. What you're actually going to do is you're going to be able to strategize with the clients. How do you do that? Well, you make the entire interaction with clients from lead all the way to closing solely focused on them, not you. Now, that doesn't mean take orders, because what clients come in with is a bit of knowledge to be dangerous, and they throw that out there, and we think serving them is immediately to take that and run. Hey, the clients want a payment of this. Very critical to understand what their payment range is. More important to understand the why behind it, and then use your own thought process, your own knowledge to potentially challenge if that payment in the monthly mortgage makes more sense than maybe paying off debt, but going above their payment seal, but backfilling their budget with much less overall output because you had the knowledge. And so how would we do things like that? Well, when we're interested in somebody, we actually spend time being thorough around them. And when you've done enough of that, the right loan and strategy starts to stand out very glaringly, especially if you have a great knowledge skill set. What I find is that people skip these steps all the time because they make a narrative in their head that says, I want to be fast. I want to be efficient. I want to be likable. So I'm going to try to make it very easy, very smooth, very little invasiveness to the client. And when you write that, when that's your reticular activator system, you don't say things like, gosh, I need to spend a fair amount of time with these clients digging in to everything about them so that I can come up with the very best strategy for their loan. I need to dig into their personal needs, their story, their journey, what things look like right now and what it looks like in 1 to 5 years, right? What their plans are. And when you dig in appropriately, and I'll get to the story part, a loan officer of mine called and said, hey, I'm competing on a deal, and the borrower doesn't want anything but the interest rate. That's all he wants to compete with is the interest rate and the closing costs, and that's it. And as I was listening to the loan officer, and we were kind of going back and forth, and the client already had 2 different fee estimates that honestly, he wasn't even in contract yet. So it's a little bit crazy because people were quoting crazy rates. And I was like, what do you know about the client? He knew very little about the client. And so I instantly, this little handy tool, I was able to literally bring it up, look on Facebook, catch a few things that just gave me a few pieces of insight into the client. And then I asked the loan officer, would you be comfortable if I got on the phone with them? When I got on the phone with the client, I started asking a few questions. And first of all, the easiest way to ask questions that you feel like could be potentially invasive is to compliment first. Basic tactic, compliment first. How do you compliment? You might say something like, and I'll make up the name of the client, I'll call him Matt. Hey, Matt. First of all, I took a look at your file, and I just want to say out loud that you've done a beautiful job with your finances. You've obviously got beautiful job stability, incredible credit, and a great down payment. Now, I'm making deposits, and I want you to be really clear on that. Compliments are deposits into somebody, and what they do is they take down fight or flight in the brain, and they allow for somebody to then say, gosh, I'm open to hearing what you have to say next, because what you just said put me in a warm, fuzzy spot. And then I might say, do you mind if I review a few things with you? Of course, the client says, yes, you've just paid me a lot of compliments. And I start to ask a lot of questions. And so I'll say, why are you guys making the move? Talk about that. Talk about the house that they're about to buy. We get into the details around the house. Do you feel like this is your forever home? Why or why not? Talk about that. And with each question that I'm asking, not yes or no questions, but tell me about that, which is one of my key phrases that I say. Tell me more about that. Define that for me. And I'm digging, and they'll take you on a journey that if you stay fully interested in them, that journey will then lead you to guiding them in the best possible way. And because they have spoke so much about themselves, because they have gone into detail, because they have gone into places that they hadn't even thought pertained to the loan, but they've shared them with you, the trust curtain starts to fall. And while it's all the way up here, meaning I don't want you to really see me, know me, and I don't want to really see you and know you, when it falls, all of a sudden we're making eye contact. We're making connection. We're making verbal tone communication that it starts to build trust. We might be laughing a little bit or reflecting some. And pretty soon that trust curtain falls all the way to the ground and you've beat the biggest obstacle. Now that's not through manipulation. It's through interest of the client. And as you go through each step and you compliment, how many times do you ask key questions? And I can't get into everything on a podcast, but how many times do you ask questions like, let's go through your credit report. I paid you a great compliment on your score. I mean that sincerely. I generally will give some ethos, which is statistics, if you will, and backing, if you will, to what I'm saying. So I might say, you know, that I always know credit report stats, right? You know that this percentage of clients, I can't think of them off my head right now, but this percentage of clients has a score. This is the average score in America. You're this much higher. Do you know why that's important? They might not. So I give them the information on why credit score is important. The truth is most financing opportunities don't come with any reward over a 760. Most. However, being over a 760 gives you icing on the cake. And what icing on the cake does is when you go to maybe buy a house right after you bought a car, or buy a house right after you've applied for a, no interest credit card, or had to do something within your business to where you've had several credit pulls, or buy a house after you just got done charging up a credit card that you're about to pay off, but we hit it right at max balance. Your icing on the cake protects your score so that you always stay in the highest tiered category. So yes, it's a beautiful thing to get all the way into the 800s. It's not necessarily a rewarded thing on anything over 760. It's more of a buffer. And that's a beautiful thing. Why would I go into such detail on credit? And I could do that in a low credit score situation, in a mid credit score situation. I could give facts and a storyline so that they could relate. And I would do that because that's called something of a brain surgeon close. When you educate people and people feel more knowledgeable as a result of their time with you, they trust you more and they want to stay connected to you longer. What a beautiful gift. Right? I know the most knowledgeable dentists and doctors and hairdresser, plant and tree person, veterinarian. There's all sorts of people in my life that I access the most frequently because I trust them. I trust their input. And they ask me questions that make me know that it's all about me instead of them selling something to me. What a big difference. What a big difference. So reviewing credit all the way. I challenge. I ask what interest rates are on average on each credit card. I ask how long they're going to keep their cars and is there going to be a need for future cars. We talk about the age of the kids and, make some references in there. We talk about the layout of the home and the neighborhoods. We talk about how many they're withholding on their pay stub currently and how much they pay or receive from the IRS in a refund every single year based on their filing status. We talk about it. Depending on age range and overall credit history and assets, you navigate this a little differently for each of them. But you would never know these things if you didn't constantly develop your knowledge skill set. And knowledge isn't just boop, boop, boop. I put it in the computer. I got a DU or an LP approval. If you're in the loan world, you know what that is. Boop, boop, boop. I gave them the payment they technically asked for and the cash to close is right in there. And I closed the loan on time. That puts you in the sea of sameness that will ultimately always get beat by interest rate or closing costs or speed or overall tech and the ease of use. And those aren't things that require a great human connection. So where you ultimately will win is the very best in human connection. You have to expand your knowledge skill set. Otherwise, you're just a really nice person. And being a really nice person doesn't ultimately win when they've hired you for a professional service. So yes, be great at sales. Yes, continue to work on leadership, but sales comes first. Knowledge and huge depth of knowledge will absolutely not only add and invest in other people's lives, but it will certainly add the most impact into you and what you fulfill in other people. I hope this was helpful. If it was, share it. It's a huge topic. I could go on and on and on, but I think it gave you enough for a few tactics and a few shifts in your own business. And we will see you on the next Wild.